Do you often wonder what's going on in the world and whether or not we're all gone bloody crazy? Now, I wanted to have a conversation, I guess, about the craziness that is the United States, the craziness that embeds all of us no matter wherever we live, and how crazy life seems to be right at the moment. For 18 months, nearly 2 years, we've been living in a world of absolute craziness, which has, in a bizarre sort of way, brought out the crazies. And it's not just the US, even though the US to me is a prime example of craziness gone even crazier than crazy could be, to a place whereby you wonder what it is that is motivating people to be able to do whatever it is. So what does this craziness bring out? And I think at the end of the day, I've come to the conclusion that the craziness brings out a latent sense of insecurity and fear, and has developed into a sense of power at all costs. So no matter what happens, we're gonna promote our own interests, not the interests of the public. Politicians aren't interested necessarily in working through the issues that their constituents have. They're interested in working through issues which are going to determine whether or not they have more power, less power, or maintain the status quo. And most of them, I think, believe that they need more power, and they're using the coronavirus, the war in Afghanistan, climate change, a whole host of issues now in order for them to demonstrate how much power they believe that they can have and how to get it. Now, I've been to the United States a couple of times, and I just love the people in the US. I love their diverse culture. I love the type of people that they are. They're genuine people as far as I'm concerned. But there's a bank of people who are running your country who don't believe in you as they should, and that are interested in self-serving opportunities to enhance their own positions. And we see that with Margaret Taylor Greene, for example. Hate to mention her name. However, she is one of those people who is specifically only interested in focusing on her power. And there's no disputing the fact that this woman is actually crazy. And then there's some people, even on the left, who are interested in manifestly producing their own sense of authority and power because, like Minchin, for example, and I keep thinking of this woman, Salima, but I think I mean Saliva. So there's this other person on the left who is prepared to take them to the cliff in order to exert their own power. So it's almost like they have forgotten how it is to work together, to be able to bring people together for a particular cause, particularly that cause being hopefully to improve the well-being of all those people that they represent. And I think they've got to a point where they just don't give a shit anymore. They don't care about those people. They're only interested in their narcissistic, self-serving attributes. And I think that's pretty sad. But the question really now remains, if this is the case, what are we to do about it? Now, I have a lot of hope that the United States will find, in a way, for the majority to rule, and that they will no longer be governed by the extreme right, or even for that matter, the extreme left. That somewhere in the middle sits a group of people who will say enough is enough, and these are the type of people now, in other words, the people that sit within the centre and those that are independents, hopefully, will find a way to find a body of people who will represent them appropriately. Who knows what that'll look like? Who knows whether it's even possible? Who knows whether they've even got that now, just they haven't come out of the woodwork. And there must be a lot of people within the Republican Party who just do not believe that Donald Trump is the Messiah. For God's sake, you've got the greatest moron of our time presenting himself in a way that is going to lead people out of their dreamed up wilderness. and take them to the promised land. And I can guarantee you right now that Donald Trump's promised land is full of bankruptcy, deceit and lies. So if you wish to go there, fine. But at the end of the day, it's going to be something that's going to be destructive, because that's who he is. And I think we've lost sight of politicians who want to focus on what is in your best interest. I had an interesting example of that came to me today when my wife was talking to me about climate change here in Australia. And the issue was raised because at the moment, Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister here in Australia, has decided that he's going to sit with his coalition partners and they're not going to go to the conference in Glasgow, the climate conference. Well, he's going to go to the climate conference, but he's not going to go there with a plan to zero emissions by 2050. In fact, because the small-natured, small national party, which doesn't garner enough seats really to hold a government of its own, and has to sit alongside with a small number of people with the Liberal Party here in Australia, which is the Conservative Party, and they decided that because the national parties and because the Liberals are dependent upon them, that the national parties didn't want to go to as far as zero, because the National Party believe that the mining sector, which mainly sits in the country, admittedly, we don't have great deals of mines within our major cities, but they sit within the country, and of course those people will be without employment if all the coal mines close down and so forth, and if you go to renewables. But someone did raise the issue that I think it was actually a national politician who stated that they represent the poorest people in our community, the most disadvantaged. And to some extent, I think that's probably true. And my wife said to me, well, isn't that an issue? That if you're representing the most disadvantaged people, why are they still disadvantaged? If you're that good a politician, if you're that interested in these people, why aren't you lifting out of that sense of disadvantage and helping them to be more prosperous, to not rely on welfare and other benefits, but to encourage them to indulge in the prosperity which is Australia? And it raises an interesting question, doesn't it? So what is it that they're interested in, these politicians, that is of importance to them but not important to the people they represent? And that is their own survival. And so in Australia we have this, I don't know whether it's a microcosm or not, but we have this group of politicians who are just like the American politicians, are interested in themselves and interested in surviving, just surviving. That's all they care about. That's all they want. They don't give a crap about anybody else. And they are people, unfortunately, that we in our community vote for. And I think the time's got to come where we've got to look at some of these politicians and say, nope, you're not good enough for me. We need somebody else that's going to represent us. It doesn't matter what party that they belong to. It's about taking a bipartisan approach, if you like, if that's such a thing, with regard to the people that we select, and select people that have got integrity. The sad thing is, though, we don't often know what that looks like. We've got a case here at the moment where Gladys Berejiklian, who was the ex-premier to New South Wales, recently, like a couple of weeks ago, she resigned because the Independent Commission on Corruption has decided that she had done something that she shouldn't have done, and she'd broken an agreement which she herself had devised through her party in terms of an integrity process within the Liberal Party. And I won't go into it. She had a relationship with somebody, and they negotiated the purchase of certain lands and so forth, and the rights to build in an area in their electorate, and she had verified that or approved it in the end, and she didn't declare her relationship, which is what she should have done. So she's in the shit, no doubt about that. But she talks about, so these people, they talk about integrity, and yet when push comes to shove, we realise that the one thing that they don't have is a sense of integrity, that they're lacking in transparency. They don't seem to give a rat's ass about the people that they're representing, that they just want to make sure that at the next election they appear to be able to have done whatever it is they said they were initially going to do for their constituents. But we don't look deep enough at it until they get caught out. And suddenly we realise that these people were just looking after themselves and they didn't really give a rat's ass about us in the first place. And it's about time, I think, that we need to become more aware of what these people, what these politicians are actually saying to us. And we need to scrutinise them more thoroughly than what we do. So we have, so these crazy people that we have around that are anti-vaxxers, that are saying and doing things that just make no sense whatsoever, that believe that Trump is the Messiah and that he's coming back by Christmas, even though they've said he was coming back a month or so ago and he didn't, and that he is actually the true president and so forth. Yet he's not, is at Mar-a-Lago, sipping his Coke and eating his donuts. Those people, they're becoming, I think, they're loud, right? No one's going to dispute that. They are loud, but they are becoming less and less significance. We don't hear all that much about anti-vaxxers at the moment in Australia because a month or so ago they had a rally in Melbourne against having to wear masks and mandatory requirements and so forth. And I think a whole lot of those people got the virus. And in Melbourne, the number of infections has skyrocketed. And so they have decided that perhaps they need, either they're all in hospital or on ventilators, or some of them have become very sick, or the majority of people have come to realise that getting vaccinated is a good thing. That we have in Australia here, we have two territories, Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory, which is equivalent to your Washington, D.C. And here in our capital, they're up to 99% first vaccinated, which is an amazing figure, probably the only place in the world where they've got up that high. And we see the vaccination rates increasing, or at a steady increase in most states, particularly those states like New South Wales and Victoria, where the virus has run a bit rampant over the last few months. So, but that group, that small group of anti-vaxxers, is either diminishing or becoming quieter and quieter because they're starting to realise that the only way to escape this the virus is to become vaccinated. And they're starting to realise, I think, that not only governments but corporations are now making decisions about how to keep their staff safe. So the wearing of masks, social distancing, requirements within hotels and pubs and nightclubs are the way that we're going to have to go in order to deal with the problem. And people are starting to think, well, okay, I accept that now, but even though I was kicking up a fuss about it a few months back, I need to keep quiet because I'm not going to tell my mates that this is the decision I've made. I've got the shot. And I'm not going to tell people that I've got the shot because then I'm going against everything that I stood for a couple of months ago. And I can't afford to be humiliated like that. So I'm going to sit back and I'm going to say nothing. If someone asks me, I'll say I haven't been vaccinated. But what does it matter? They won't know. It's a secret. So so there's this crazy group of people. Now, what I do wonder about is to whether those crazies are going to become more influential or less. And that's the issue. And I hope they become less. But I am fearful that they might increase, the voices that they have may get louder. And in the US, because of the lack of gun control, and everybody bloody well seems to have a gun. That's not true. 1/3 have guns. But so many of people have guns and terrible weapons that I am fearful that it might just get a wee bit out of control in the US. But here in Australia, we don't have guns, but we have a lot of loud people who are still very threatening sometimes when it comes to issues around vaccinations. And we have, there's a party called the Australia One Party, which I looked up the other day, which is talking about everybody's sovereign rights. So they take this sovereign citizen perspective, which is another group of crazies, and start amplifying them. And even though they've made a few attempts to get into federal parliament, they've always failed, and they've been deregistered in federally. So they're a party which have got a voice, a megaphone, because the leader of that party has been interviewed a number of times. And so they do have a voice, but whether they'll ever get loud enough. And I guess we will always have people like that who are extreme in their views, who believe that politicians are corrupt, which I think is always an interesting take, given that many of them are trying to get into politics anyway and earn their $200,000 a year. I guess they're not going to give that back to the people that supported them. I guess they'll pocket all of that themselves. Will they become corrupt too, as all politicians seem to be corrupt, so they say? So. Maybe that's what they're hankering for. They're hankering for this sense of, that they themselves are looking for an opportunity to be corrupt. Politics is a way to do that. So they're going to enter into politics so they can fulfill their dream of being corrupt. So let's see how that plays out. But just want to finally say that there are a lot of crazies out there. Be wary of them, because often they could be your brother, your sister, your mum, your dad. I was watching something yesterday which was about a woman who was dismayed that her family have disowned her, given that she thinks that Trump is Jesus Christ, and her family have disowned her because of those beliefs. She's right, they're wrong. No one's ever going to change her point of view. And I think, if when Donald Trump dies, I guess there'll be lots of people that'll be waiting for him to be risen from the dead. So they'll wait there 3 or 4 days, and hopefully he'll be able to push the stone back from the sepulchre, and he will come forth as Jesus did. So the crazies are there, but we don't need to let those crazies govern who we are and how we think about our world. So thanks for being with me, everybody. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.